My name is Jason Stabinskas. I'm the Managing Director of Los Cerros Limited, and this investor presentation is on the back of recent project-specific announcements released on the ASX and a capital raising via rights issue released on the ASX on the 23rd of February 2023. And I refer you to those project announcements and the rights issue announcement and the offer document for further detailed disclaimers, forward-looking statements and relevant competent person statements. With the acquisition of the PNG portfolio, Los Cerros has developed a diversified metal portfolio with new projects in copper and nickel and additional gold targets in addition to the projects we have in Colombia. It also diversified our regional exposure with assets both in Colombia and in PNG. And whilst they're geographically very far apart, geologically they're very similar. They're both on tectonic margins where you have the Andes and the mountains of PNG forming, and gold and copper, and in the case of PNG, a nickel opportunity in those areas. So they're very similar geologically. We have a 2.6 million ounce resource established at Quinchía in Colombia, and there's a 0.47 million ounce reserve as part of that 2.6 million ounces in the form of the Miraflores 2017 DFS. In terms of exploration, we're focused on high impact exploration in PNG at the moment, and that includes drilling at the Kusi copper gold target starting in March of 2023. Now, we've said in various announcements, given the size of our portfolio and the number of compelling targets that we have, that we're open to partners coming in to work with us to advance some of those projects concurrently whilst we focus on projects like Kusi. We have $8.4 million in the bank, and of course, the rights issue I mentioned earlier will supplement that amount. So before we go into the projects, let's talk briefly about that current live offer. It's via a rights issue to shareholders. It's 1 for 5 at 3 cents, which raises up to 4.3 million Australian dollars. The offer to shareholders closes on the 20th of March 2023, unless extended. And there are many reasons for conducting this capital raising right now, and for conducting it with a rights issue to shareholders as the mechanism. But the main reasons is really to give us the flexibility to expand the field programs. As I mentioned, we've got lots of targets, a lot of them very compelling targets, and we'd like the flexibility of being able to advance some of those targets with high impact early stage exploration, and in the case of Kusi, drilling. It also is timed for the drilling at Kusi to allow our shareholders to consider the portfolio and elect whether to participate in the rights issue or not before we get the news flow from the drilling program. So March 20, 2023, the closing date should be before we start to see results coming out of Kusi. Now, part of Kusi is Leah's Lode. I'll just draw your attention briefly to this image here. This is a photo taken of the trench at Leah's Lode. That's myself leaning up against the rock and John in the high-vis vest. The rock behind John there, grade 61.3 grams per tonne gold, 18% copper, and 135 grams per tonne silver. And whilst this is Leah's Lode, and we talk about Kusi all the time, this is part of the area that will be drilled in the 3,000 metre drilling program. Just to put that into perspective, there's Kusi. You can see here in the Ono project. Lae is up here. Lae is the largest industrial port in Papua New Guinea. This is a plan view of Leah's Lode, of the Kusi project. And there's several styles of mineralization here. We are focused on the skarn unit, the Kusi skarn layer, one of several skarn layers. But there's presumably a central porphyry system driving this whole area as well. But our focus is on the skarn. The skarn has been drilled previously, and these 3 holes intercepted the skarn target area. And you can see there 20 meters at 2.89, 35 meters at 3, and 10 meters at 2.39. But this ridge, the sides of this ridge also have exposure of this skarn, so it actually outcrops and daylights. And we've trenched those areas and got 71 meters at 5 grams per tonne, although that's along the trench, not perpendicular to strike. So 71 meters along the trench, 20 meters here at 3.84. and some various rock chips and similar to make this area really exciting and relatively low risk in terms of drilling targets. And this is where we'll be starting in March of this year. The other area is Leah's Lode. There are two trenches conducted at Leah's Lode, 8 meters at 11.5 grams per ton gold and 2.6% copper, and 22 meters at 4.68 grams per ton gold in a recent announcement. And this is where that photo was taken from on the previous slide with 61.3 grams per ton gold. So this is another area that will be part of the drilling program. But whilst that drilling program is underway and has already begun in terms of field exploration, we're active in these areas here at the moment. So this is the focus for the drilling program, and this is the focus already started in the sort of the early stage scouting work. So we hope to see some exciting results coming out of that field program as well. Longer term, there's obviously additional drilling that we'd be planning for this area. And of course, there's the causative central porphyry to this whole system, this whole complex that we hope to pursue in one day, but not in the immediate future. So here's a simplistic stylized cross-section of what's going on. So this is the skarn layer that we're interested in, and those 3 holes that have previously intercepted that skarn layer with the intercepts recorded here. We have in those drill holes logged thin dikes that we associate with potentially a porphyry core, though no one's ever drilled into the porphyry itself. There's a deeper skarn layer that we see in the valley down here, and where it outcrops, we see elevated silver, lead and zinc, which is indicative of being proximal or distal to a porphyry source. So you see higher levels of silver, lead and zinc as you move further away from the porphyry source. So again, sort of an indirect encouraging sign that there's some central porphyry system driving the whole area. But the immediate focus is this limestone skarn layer. Now, Very is another one of our key targets of interest. This is the unusual one. This is in the south of the entire portfolio. It's where the Solomon plate is colliding with the Australian plate and lifting up these ultramafics and therefore potential for nickel. This sample here is taken in a very creek that grades 23.3% nickel and 10.6 grams per ton gold. And that's just one of many float samples or samples from near that creek area, and grading with equally interesting nickel results: 15, 11, 10, 15, 23, 26, 45, 32, and so on. So whilst this is a very early stage, the fact that such ultra high grade nickel occurs around this area is really exciting. And so there's a fieldwork planned here for Q1 and spilling into Q2. The Ube project, this was a project announcement was released on Ube a week ago. This is a vein-hosted and porphyry copper gold target. And this is one of those substantial, really compelling targets where we've said, we're open to JV partners coming in and helping us with this project. This sample here you can see is obviously from outcrop. It's a polished sample at 9.5% copper and 156 grams per ton gold. So Ube occurs near Very. This is where the nickel story is. And we have Ube here. We have another series of anomalous surface results, a long trend here, what we call the Liamu copper trend, and extending right up into Liamu itself. And we have some exciting targets up there, in particular a target called Dada, which has vein stockworks near surface. And you can see there 96 meters at 0.42. That's not in the porphyry itself. It's associated stockworks near the porphyry, but that's a positive sign, early sign of something potentially being there as well. So we, in our license, hold most of this copper gold trend, and Ube sits roughly central in that trend area. Now, again, like Kusi, there's a central causative system, causative porphyry, driving the whole area. And you'll see in the next slide that there's a big EM feature, circular EM feature that is very suggestive of where that porphyry might be. The Liamu copper trend itself is roughly 60 kilometers long, and whilst there's a lot of work done on Ube, there are other greenfield areas that we hope to see some attention in the near future as well. So this is that circular EM anomaly I was talking about. There's anomalous or elevated IP geophysics signatures near there as well. To the south are three what we call the cats: Lion, Cheetah, and Tiger. Cheetah and Tiger have been drilled, and the results weren't that compelling. Lion, on the other hand, hasn't been drilled, and you can see some of the exciting rock chips we've got from Lion. Copper grades of sort of 9, occasionally 10%, and gold grades in the hundreds, so 156, 332, 100, 209, and so on. So that's an interesting area down here, distal to the causative central system, or the modelled porphyry system. The other area of considerable interest is this Puma vein here. This is 60 meters wide, and the surface grades are compelling in places. For example, 367 grams per ton gold, and another sample in the area of 4.29% copper. But what's really exciting here is the dip of this vein, logged mapped vein system on surface actually projects down into an IP high, geophysics high, at about sort of 250, 350 meters down. Now that's really exciting, because what we could be seeing here is a blowout in that area. So something like a breccia pipe or something like that, where we see a larger area of this vein-hosted gold. So very interesting target here in that area as well. Emu is another project that we spoke about recently in an announcement in the last week or two. Again, this is a copper gold target. It's in elephant country. If you know of any projects, gold projects in PNG, chances are you recognize some of the names on this map, like Octeti and Porgera. So we're in elephant country, and the main target here is a porphyry, and I'll talk about that on the next slide. But while we're on this slide, I'll talk about these ISS targets as well. So Emu here, it's a 3 kilometer by 2 kilometer surface anomalous area, anomalous for gold and copper. So quite a large footprint. It's an exciting target. But we also have elevated surface results at Bickaroo, such as 63 grams per ton gold and 25, and further west in Michaels Creek with various interesting gold grades there as well. So this is Emu, the central porphyry target area. Now, this map's a little misleading. This is a plan view, so it's not a cross section, it's a plan view, and the green is the 0.3% copper equivalent shell. So this is exactly the same image, just in a simplified plan view. So it's presenting exactly the same image in the same scale, although on here you can see the copper equivalent, the copper ppm grades in the drill core logs. And you can see they're quite good results: 126 meters at 0.39, 204 at 0.42 copper equivalent, 305 at 0.65 copper equivalent, and so on. There is an area here, it's a breccia zone that was intercepted in this hole going through here, and that was a really exciting area. That was 14 meters at 2.43% copper and 2.78 grams per ton gold for about 4.5 copper equivalent, starting from 186 meters down hole, this area here. And that's really interesting because if we look at the more simplified view, you can see we don't have much information here. Now, this hole started over here and has gone down at depth here. So near surface, we don't have much information here. This is where the high was that I was just talking about. And there's a surface rock chip sample over here, grading at 2.3% copper and 0.24 grams per ton gold. So this area has the potential for higher grade material, both in the terms of the breccia, but also in terms of perhaps finding the porphyry causative pulse, the main pulse that carries the higher grade in this area. None of these holes are interpreted to have hit the causative source, that main pulse that's driving the whole system. So we have a program starting here in April focused on that particular area. Now, very briefly onto the Colombian portfolio. As you know, we have two areas, the Andes project and the Quinchilla project. And the Quinchilla project holds the established resource, which stands at 2.6 million ounces at a gram per ton. Most of that sitting in the Tesorito porphyry discovery, minor contributors from Dos Quebradas, which is about 2.5 kilometers northwest, and the Miraflores underground, expressed here as a resource, but as I mentioned in one of the earlier slides, there's a reserve there, 470,000 ounces at 3.3 grams per ton. There is a high-grade starter pit at Tesorito, which is quite exciting. also when you consider that high-grade starter pit, which grades at 1.23, contains lower grade material, in this case 322,000 ounces at 0.63. Now, what we're doing at Quinchilla is we're adding sort of robustness to that resource by addressing early stage engineering and metallurgy and similar. So we've conducted a pre-PEA level study. This was done through Ausenco in Canada. And that looked at various production scenarios. Do we start at Miraflores? Do we start at Tesorito? Do we size the plant for a combination of the two? And all those various scenarios or permutations, and looking at the economic output potential for those scenarios. And whilst, of course, we don't have a JORC standard that would allow us to quote specifics, we're sufficiently encouraged by those results to continue further investigations. We also announced the results of the metallurgical test work at Tesorito, and that was very encouraging as well. Not only were the recoveries reasonably robust at 87% sort of all over, but also 97% in the near surface saprolites. But the metallurgical process flow suggested this was going to be a very conventional process flow with a grind to 75 micron and a conventional leach absorption circuit with nothing in the way of significant deleterious elements or copper or silver building up in the system. So a very, very, very basic process. Now, we've also recently submitted the Miraflores EIA. That's the final major submission to the authorities for the Miraflores DFS for approvals to go into production if we choose to. I'm not saying that we are, but if we choose to go into production, that's the final major submission for that to occur. Also, we recently announced some results from Cebal. This is a porphyry less than a kilometre away from Tesorito and Miraflores. Recent work suggesting where we could potentially drill and find the causative source of the Cebal porphyry mineralization we see in previous drill holes and so on. So there's still some exciting targets to pursue very close to that existing resource there. The other major event in Colombia in December of 2022 was that we won the Mining Industry ESG Award. This is conducted by the Colombian Gold Symposium, a conference held in Medellin in December, and we were the winners of that award. So the path forward, we have a significant portfolio across copper, gold, nickel in highly prospective regions. We have an expanded team of experts. Part of the acquisition of the portfolio in PNG also resulted in employing the two founders of that major portfolio, John Dobe and Glenn Twomey. They're both part of the executive team now. We're well funded, 8.4 million in cash, plus the current rights issue. Our focus is on high impact exploration across PNG currently, that includes a 3,000 meter diamond drilling program at Kusi commencing in March of 2023. This sample again is from Leah's Lode. This is that rock you saw in the photo on the second slide or third slide, grading 61.3 grams per tonne gold at Leah's Lode, which is part of that Kusi drilling program. And as I mentioned through the presentation, we're also open to the idea of pursuing other projects and advancing other projects with third-party funding. So thank you for your interest.